Hey, good morning. Back at school for chapter 4. In the morning, Dad came in my room. I was happy to see him because I'd been awake most of the night from Grandma's coughing attacks. She would sputter and spit for a while until it sounded like she had dredged up a hairball from deep inside. Afterward, she'd clear her throat and finally settle down. Then, just as I was drifting back to sleep, she'd start up all over again. Finally, I got up, turned on my tape player, but the batteries had worn out, so I couldn't escape her awful sounds, and I spent hours chewing my fingernails down to the part of the skin that tastes like baby carrots. "How's your patch?" Dad asked, and sat at the edge of my bed with my box of patches. "You need a change before I head out to work?" "Yup," I replied, and turned my book face down on the bedside table. "You better need to leave another one, just in case." I was thinking I would be alone with Grandma all day and might need some extra meds to help. "Doc says one at a time," he said, pulled a patch out of his shirt pocket and gave it to me. "One more thing," he added. "I need to draw your foot so I can get you the right size baseball cleats." He put a piece of paper on the floor and I stepped on it. "By the way," he asked, looking up at me as he drew the outline with a pencil, "you throw left or right?" "Left," I replied. "I catch right." Excellent. We could use a lefty pitcher. He stood up and folded the paper. "Hey," he said before slipping out the door, "I told Grandma to make you some porridge, but not too hot." He grinned, and I grinned too, and he was gone. But I still had my grin. As soon as he left, I peeled the covers all the way down and searched for Pablo. He had a bad habit of chewing a hole in the sheet and digging a burrow in the mattress. I think he was part prairie dog, too. When I found him, I lifted him up and we danced around. "I'm bad. I'm mad. I'm 100% Mom and Dad." It was my favorite song to sing, and Pablo liked it too. But I couldn't swing him around too much, or he'd throw up. I got dressed, and when I looked into the mirror in the back of the door to fix my hair, I saw that I was still grinning. So far, so good, I thought. He's happy. I'm happy. Then I remembered I had to spend the whole day with Grandma. I decided on the spot that I was going to be nice to her. I figured it was my choice to set the mood. She was always going to be her two selves, one nice and funny, the other mean and scary. She wouldn't change because she never felt that anything she did was wrong. So all the changing was up to me, and that was okay because I knew I could be wrong most of the time. So I'd start off with my best foot forward, and if she was mean, then I'd stay nice for as long as I could until she wore me out and I would go hide. I put my hand on the doorknob, took a deep breath, opened the door. When Pablo and I entered the kitchen, Grandma was prying a stuck Pop-Tart out of this toaster with a butter knife. "How'd you sleep?" she asked. Her voice was hoarse. "Grandma, you should unplug the toaster before you stick a knife in," I said, trying to be helpful. "Once I did what you're doing, and I got a shock that knocked me right off the counter." "Well, I'm half dead already," she replied, "so a little shock might just pep me up." "Well, that's why I eat vitamins," I said. "How many Pop-Tarts do you want? How many dogs does that dog eat?" "We need to buy some dog food," I replied. "And Dad said you were making me porridge, like the three bears." "Ah, he's a big talker. Better get used to his jibber-jabber. He'll drive you nuts." "Can we call Mom?" "Why don't you write her a letter? A stamp is cheaper than a phone call." "Mom gave me money for a phone," I said. "What do you want to tell her?" Grandma asked. "Well, I want to tell her Pablo's okay, and I found him on the porch." I gave him a little squeeze, and he made a sound like bagpipes warming up. "You don't think someone would steal that mongrel, do you?" she said, pointing at Pablo with her knife. "Stop calling him names. He's a Chihuahua mix. Besides, Mom said—" "I don't want to hear what your mom has to say on the subject. Just call her, get it over with," she said, and she bit down on a piece of burnt Pop-Tart. But she was panting so hard from talking to me and too fast that she had to turn and spit it into the sink so she could take a deep breath off her oxygen hose, which she had hooked to the top of a skinny green tank that was on the counter. The phone was on the kitchen wall, and when I picked it up, Grandma began to whistle to herself like she didn't want to hear what I had to say. But I knew she was listening to every word. Mom was already at work, so I called her there. "Beauty and the Beast hair salon," Tiffany, the receptionist, said. This is Joey," I whispered with my hand wrapped around the voice piece. "Is my mom there?" "Oh, 1 sec, hun," she said, and then I heard her yell, "Fran, it's your kid. Sounds like he's been kidnapped." I heard quick steps. "Hey," Mom said, "are you all right?" "I'm fine." And Pablo is too. I couldn't believe I forgot him. Well, I wasn't a mile down the road before he started pitching a fit in the glove box. It was no big deal to turn around. "We were at Storybook Land," I said. And then she started asking so many questions about Dad and Grandma and me that I was saying yes, no, and yes, like I was playing ping pong with my words. "Well, Joey, have a great day. It's slow here, so I'm dyeing my hair red and getting a pedicure. I'm going to paint my toenails to match my hair and buy a nice pair of summer sandals. You'll hardly know me when you return." "Pablo will sniff you out," I said. "Gotta run," she cut in. Dye is leaking down into my eyes, and it stinks like the blazes. "One more thing," I said, raising my voice so that Grandma could hear even if she was deaf. "Dad is real nice. We had fun. He's putting me on his baseball team, and he's buying me a glove and cleats." "Great, Joey. I'm glad to hear that. Now call me later. Love you." And she hung up. When I turned around, Grandma was leaning against the kitchen counter with her arms folded across her front. She was eyeing me up and down while taking deep breaths off her oxygen hose. "I'm glad to have a few hours alone with you," she said in a voice that was like being sent to the principal. "I like to set you straight on some things around here before you get any big ideas. Things in this house aren't exactly the same as Carter said they are." "What do you mean?" I asked and leaned over to give Pablo a piece of Pop-Tart. "Oh, he's got a steady job, but he still sneak drinks now and again. He's got himself a girlfriend that hasn't figured out what a loose screw he is. Just know he hasn't turned into the squeaky clean Boy Scout he says he is, even though he's a neat freak." She pointed to the Pop-Tart crumbs. "He'll blow his top if he finds crumbs on the floor," she warned. "Are you trying to scare me?" I asked as I stooped down and picked them up. "No. I just want you to know what you're stepping into here. It's no picnic living with him. And every day I think I should have stuck it out with you and your mom." "I thought you slipped down the sewer drain." "I found your shoe by the grate." "I hopped on a bus. But I was looking for that shoe." She laughed, and her laughter turned into a coughing fit, and she bent over. When she straightened up, she raised one finger and held it out in front of my face. "A word to the wise. Don't blab to your mom everything that goes on around here if you want some time with your dad. Because if she knew what all takes place in that man's head, she'd pick you up in the bat of an eye, and you'd never see him again." "I think I need to change my patch," I said. I grabbed Pablo off the floor and speed-walked back to my room. Maybe Dad had done some bad things in the past, I thought as I opened my shirt and reached around to the back of my shoulder and ripped off the patch. But just like me, he deserved a second chance, and I wanted to make up my own mind about him. Then I put the new patch on in a slightly different spot, rubbed it a minute to heat it up to get it going. You can't hide from me all day," Grandma called out and rapped on the door. "I got big plans for us." "What?" I yelled. I didn't know where to put my old patch, so I stuck it inside the book I was reading. "Golf," she yelled back. "Now let's get a move on." I opened the door and stared at her. She had rigged herself up to her oxygen tank, which was stuffed into a blue shoulder bag. The yards of clear plastic hose from the top of the tank ran underneath her shirt and out the back of her collar. It split into two separate lines that curled over her ears and joined at a nose piece that was clipped onto the thin wall of flesh between your nostrils. Little jets of air whistled right up her nose. The whole thing sort of looked like a costume from a science fiction movie. "Don't laugh," she warned me, "or I'll swat you with a 2-iron." Really, there was nothing to laugh at. It all seemed pretty awful to me, because if someone turned the oxygen up, I think she'd swell up and pop like a balloon. "Believe it or not," she said, "I've been looking forward to your coming. Your dad makes fun of me when I hook this thing up. He says I look like one of those life support patients, so I don't use it, and half the time when I go and do anything, I'm panting like an old hound dog." "What do you want to do?" I asked. "Well, if you're anything like your old self, you need to run around a while. So I got a plan that'll suit both of us. Now, grab my tank, we'll go over to the park, and I'll hit a few golf balls to you." "Okay," I said, even though I wasn't sure I was allowed to say no. We're going to stop there in Chapter 3.